So you mentioned cannibalism. Does this tie into the adrenochrome thing? And if so, how does that work?
Well, you know, I wish I was an expert on that, and I'm not. So, but I do know that you see continual reference to that, including, it's interesting because Anne Marie, when she first spoke to me, she was a lawyer, but she had doctor friends of hers who were describing how it's a fairly common practice. They know, like as a minister, I came to know morticians and people who work in funeral homes, right? And she was saying that these doctors who have these contacts among morticians describe routinely how wealthy women or men will pay them to come in and you know, have sex with corpses. But part of that process is not just having sex with corpses, but killing these people and accessing exactly what you're talking about, these hormones and other aspects of the human body, which they believe bring life. And whether or not it actually does, they believe it does. And that's part of the justification of these monstrous rituals, right? It's
And
also a good way, it keeps people in line, don't forget. The best way to do this is to traumatize everyone to think your child could be taken. And then everyone stays in line. I've seen this work all over the place, right?
so to maximize the benefit of those chemicals, does the person have to be killed in a certain way, like a certain traumatic way, for example?
According to Tulse, they were shown how to maximize torture and pain for as long as possible. And it isn't just the pain and the torture, it's the terror. This keeping children in a state of terror. Now look at your average Indian residential schools. Children are brought in en masse after having been ripped away from their parents, raped and beaten on the way there by the police or others. They all line up and get their head shaved, showered with DDT. They're given a number. You can never refer to your own name anymore. You're instantly killed or tortured. You're a number. You're regimented. You're routinely taken out and raped in the middle of the night, especially if you're showing independence or any kind of leadership among the kids, targeted that way. Used in medical experiments, starved routinely. Oh, yeah, often natives have told me that the only reason they survived is because they were on the garbage detail. And while they're taking the garbage and the throwaways from the staff's dinner, they'd be shoving the garbage into their mouth, and that's how they survived. The kids were literally starved to death. Quite often, I've seen, there's even letters where officials in, there was an Anglican school in Lytton, British Columbia, said, "We've stopped feeding the children now. It's the best way to get rid of them." This is in writing. They even make reference to burying children 2 or 3 to a grave because there's so many bodies, you know. And it's you know, we gave this stuff to the media for year after year, and they never reported it. And that's why we realized we had to bring this stuff out ourselves. But it was part of that process was recognizing that, yeah, it's a system of systemic torture designed to maximize that state for as long as possible. And you know, there's more I can go into about that, but that's kind of that was definitely the plan.
Yeah, I gave a warning at the beginning of the pre-part 1 video that you had a way with words that could cause people to feel nauseated. I'm starting to feel that now, but people are going to ask, why didn't you ask him to go more into that then? If you said you could go more into it, let's do it.
All right. We documented 48 different tortures that went on in Indian schools. That's a list we released to the media in 2010, along with a list of 28 mass grave sites that we had shown exist. Unfortunately, the RCMP then went around and dug up all the grave sites, and the Supreme Court even allowed them to do that. The Supreme Court of Canada ruled that any evidence given by a Native person in a government hearing, including locations of graves, could be destroyed. So a court actually saying you can destroy evidence from a crime scene. I mean, this is what I mean about the level of corruption in the courts in any of these genocidal regimes, right? But some of those tortures, and I remember we brought a police-accredited psychic to the original residential school. We called it the Mush Hole. It was the Anglican school in Brantford, Ontario, the Mohawk school. And I remember giving to Yvonne the psychic piece of stone from the building. Didn't tell her where it was from. She dropped it. She said, "What went on there? I can't touch this. Horrible. I saw blood. I saw children with spikes being put through their eyes." You know, I saw the body parts being ripped off, blow torches being applied to their, but like, what's going on here? This is a nightmare. And when we took her there, and she had to do it in doses. She's much too sensitive to get a lot of this stuff. But over about 2 weeks, she gradually documented everything she saw. And at the school, it was basically serving as a test site, experimental center, to try out different torture and mind control techniques. Going back into the 19th century, she saw Anglican and Catholic bishops, popes, coming to this place. And that was confirmed later by people who worked for the Anglican Church in Toronto, saying there's records there that could bury the church in an honest society, right? And all of these records were locked away in Huron College in London, Ontario. And the woman who talked about it died mysteriously in a house fire, you know, about 6 months after talking to us, right? I mean, like, not so mysteriously, but she had brought out as well things she had seen references to royal family members coming over and taking part in these rituals, Dutch and British, right? But all of those techniques of torture, like, I don't know if you read the accounts of serial killers, there was an infamous one in Canada called Clifford Olson, where he was finally arrested after many years of operating, and he would take children and burn off and rip off body parts, appendages and things to maximize the crime, blind them, pull out their teeth without any painkiller, and all the sexual deviations that went on. Now, those techniques were described to us by a woman who was a survivor of a thing called the Lincoln Park Air Force Base. It was a Royal Canadian Air Force Base where Nazi doctors were used right up to the 1970s, possibly the 80s, to do pain threshold experiments on children to see how is the brain affected by torture and trauma in order to create the perfect soldier. Like and they studied this all the time in war, that, you know, like, when you're traumatized as a soldier, are you still able to continue to function? That's what they had to test, right? And exactly those tortures Clifford Olson was using on those children were being done. They're documented by government and Nazi doctors at this Lincoln Park Air Force Base. There was one survivor. Her name was Gail. And I've got her testimony again in our book, murderbydecree.com. And the government even confirmed, they came out to her place and confirmed that those things had been going on, that there was an SS doctor, codenamed Bob Armstrong. We believe his name was Heinz Lehmann, SS doctor who worked with Josef Mengele at Auschwitz in these pain threshold experiments. And she even named his SS tattoo, that's right here on the arm. And they confirmed that he was in charge of all the Indian hospitals across Canada, this former SS doctor. But then the sergeant from it was called the NCIS, the military intelligence in Canada, he then went to her and said, "We never had this conversation, your file is closed. And if you try suing the government over this, you'll go to jail for the rest of your life." You know, and I heard this from Gail and her husband on Salt Spring Island, just down the coast here. And again, it's the same old story, like, it's all out there, and yet the killers are in charge. So it's up to us, right?
Before we proceed, then, I just want to tell the viewers that there are links in the description box below this video to all your stuff. And there's a link to the website and the book. And there's something there that says you can download it for free. Is that the case?
That's right. murderbydecree.com. You can just get it there free.
So Kevin's not trying to make money off this. He's got a link. He's very generous. He made the book. You can download that for free if you want to check out his research in way more detail and what he's done. Go down in the description box and click over on his stuff and support what he's doing.